I could get a motion that we only discuss those items, those 5 items we went into closed session for. 2 items under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8, consultation with legal counsel, deed of trust review, Tilly Building, and deed of trust review on Renfro. And then 3 items under Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, or appointment, town attorney.
So moved.
Second.
And may I have a roll call for that, please?
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. Ratliff?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
Mr. Reese?
Aye.
All right, if you would stand, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Clark and then invocation by Councilman Dawson.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We ask you'll bow your head at this time. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you have given us. We ask your guidance as we work towards the future of our town. In your name, amen.
All right. First, I'd like to welcome all the guests that are here in person and online. Thank you for coming out. Glad to see so many of you. And then modification of public session. I don't think there is any, so we'll start with our public hearings. It's a joint hearing with the Planning Commission. It's going to be case number 2024 CPA-01, amending the 2023 Town of Pulaski, Virginia Comprehensive Plan, Ordinance 2024-05. Staff report first, please.
So,
Do you let them come back in? Okay. Okay.
Mr. Davis, Mr. Scrantz, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Hale, Mr. Taylor, Ms. Arthur. Yes. And staff report. So we are under state law required to, each locality in Virginia is required to have a comprehensive plan. And each locality is required to submit their comprehensive plan to the Department of Transportation to ensure its broader compliance with other statewide plans, and I believe also some federal plans as well that the state oversees. As a result, we submitted our comprehensive plan to the Virginia Department of Transportation. They returned us a list of things that needed updating in our plan that is included in your staff report. And then we have made those adjustments, which are also included in your staff report. And the majority of the items that were given to us by the state are clarifications. There was one project that the state had in their list of things that we did not realize was there. And then they had us do a classification change on one of our maps to move, I believe it was minor arterial to above major collector. And so that those changes were made as per state request, so that we are in compliance with state requirements. And we are here tonight to approve those changes to the comp plan. With the hope of, in the near future, adopting a urban development area as specified in the transportation of the comp plan for the town of Pulaski. The Planning Commission did not have a quorum on their meeting of 2/12/2024, and thus are continued, recessed the meeting until tonight to hear this matter as well.
Mr. Meyer, if you want to do yours then.
Open the meeting.
Yeah, if you want, you want to have your discussion first and.
So, public session.
Public session on behalf of the planning commission. Public hearing, I'm sorry.
And should I go ahead and open mine too then? Did you all have questions before we? Okay, then I'll open ours also. Then is there any other discussion?
And just for clarity, there was a public hearing that was noticed at that meeting, and because they didn't have a quorum, she already said that, and it was already noticed for this meeting for you all. And so it was decided to recess it and merge it. That way you would have the benefit of a public hearing before both bodies at one time. You can do it planned ahead as one. We ended up doing it as one because of the lack of quorum, so.
Yes, you can close yours. I don't have any, do you? And I'll close the public hearing for the council. And then is there, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Move on to the next.
So, Spencer, so will we just hold this, or how will I do this? Because we're going to move on to,
Mr. Mayor, as you've concluded the actual public hearing and they're going to go make a decision and come back and report on that, I do not see it as problematic for you to move on with your agenda, since
Okay.
nothing in the agenda is to be voted on specifically. So I would recommend going ahead and moving forward for the benefit of the audience and for those. And you can make a decision if they come back in the middle of a presentation, whether to pause the presentation or just have them report at the end of one of the presentations.
okay, all right. So we'll move forward then, and we'll move to our first presentations. We have two 15-minute presentations. First is Brian Weshniff and Associates, Adam Markwood.
Yes, cool. Perfect.
Hey there.
Hello.
Good evening. Yeah, so I'm here on behalf of the Calfee Culture and Community Center. As many of you may know, they're intending to use historic tax credits, both state and federal, which are incentive programs specific to historic buildings. There's a lot of projects happening right now, actually in Pulaski, that are using them, that we're involved in some capacity, and obviously they're done all over the state, and all over the country. So this is just a little bit about me, more just for your reference. I've been doing it for 15 years. We're based in Roanoke, and we do projects all over the country, but most of our projects are in Virginia for obvious reasons. So this slide violates all the rules of PowerPoint presentations. It's got way too many words, but I wanted you all to be able to reference this after the fact, so I'll just kind of run through. You guys know what the project is. I'll just skip that. I suspect you guys do, so, or would it be helpful to run through? Or I think you guys probably know the basis of the project. Okay. So, generally what the intent here is obviously to use both state and federal historic tax credits. And so we have a regional bank that is interested in being the federal historic tax credit investor. We already have somebody that can do the state credits. And in order for them to actually move forward on the historic tax credit piece, they also require being what's called a bridge lender. So I'll run through what that means. For the total project, we're estimating about $2 million from both the state and federal credits. So it's, pretty significant subsidies. For this phase of the project, it's about $1.5 million of benefit coming to the project. And so again, we have a bank that would like to do the federal credits, but they're requiring to do what's called a bridge loan. And so generally what a bridge loan is needed for historic tax credit deals, because what happens is, if this nonprofit renovated this building and went through the process to comply or to realize historic tax credits, at the end of that process, if they didn't go through a simultaneous process, what's often called monetization or syndication, where you bring in an investor that can use the credits. If they didn't go through that process, they'd be entitled to all these credits but have no way to use them because they're a nonprofit. And so there's a structure that's been used for decades now all over the country, where, again, essentially you bring in, it's often a bank, but it doesn't have to be. It can be a high net worth individual, corporation. It's all types of entities that use these credits. And at a high level, what's practically happening is, again, you've got a nonprofit that is generating these tax credits. They can't use them. This bank or corporation or high net worth individual can use them because they owe taxes to the state and federal government. And so that you essentially transfer the credits to this entity that can use them in exchange for a payment into the project. And so everybody wins in the sense that investor reduces their tax liability, the project realizes this cash infusion, and the state and federal government win because another beautiful old historic building has been renovated, which is the whole purpose of these programs in the first place. But when you get to the details of that transaction, a bridge loan is needed because most of the tax credit equity doesn't come in until the end. So the proceeds of essentially selling the credits, because again, that's the practical reality of what's happening, much of those proceeds don't come in until the end. And so the obvious question is, well, how do you pay the contractor to get to that point? And so that's what this bridge loan does. It essentially bridges the construction costs by giving you an upfront source of cash. And so this bank that's interested, they've done historic tax credit deals. For whatever reason, their current position is that they want to do the bridge loan as well as the historic tax credit. In order to do the historic tax credit part, they also want to do the bridge loan. They've looked at the project and they're very interested. They want to do it. What they have, their current position is they want somebody to step in as a co-guarantor along with the CalFee folks, the entity, for up to $500,000. And so that's currently the estimate for the bridge loan right now is about $450,000 or so. But I used 500 just kind of as a round number because, as we all know, construction numbers shift as things move, and often they shift up. So, but to get to the heart of the request, it's essentially that the town would be a co-guarantor along with the CalFee Community Center on this bridge loan up to $500,000. And so there's a lot of obvious questions. Well, what's the risk? All that kind of stuff. So I'm going to talk about that after a little bit more context that I'll give you. So I already went through some of this. Essentially, the transaction is investor can use the credits. They'll pay you for them. And this is done all over the country. And another obvious question is, can a city-owned or a nonprofit owned / operated building do this? And so I've already mentioned that yes, we've done well over 100 projects now, many in Virginia that were nonprofit. So that was a one that Brian Wishneff did long ago, the Roanoke Higher Education Center. So again, I've kind of already covered some of this. Generally the first bullet is intended to sort of convey the magnitude of these incentives. If you have a project that's $10 million, these incentives combined should cover somewhere $3 to $3.5 million of that. So again, substantial incentives, and CalFE is already doing, they're already going through this process. And I'll talk about it in later slides, but if I had to put together a team within the region of the experts that I would use, irrespective of us, so the architectural historian, the architect, and the contractor, I probably would have picked exactly who they picked. We haven't been involved they picked them well before us. So they have a really competent team. And again, we've done dozens of deals within this region. And so, we know who knows what they're doing. And so they're already taking all the right steps. And so essentially they're entitled to this incentive, and it's just a matter of going through the process to do it. And right now the linchpin is this, getting this bank to commit by hopefully getting the town to provide a co-guarantee along with the CalFE Community Center. So this just goes through, there's a three-part process. That essentially the part one shows the building is of historic significance. So these are applications you make to the Department of Historic Resources, and then they send it on to the National Park Service. That's already approved. The part two shows what you're doing to the building complies with, there's historic standards that were instituted, I think, under Reagan. That's kind of when this program really took off. There was a depreciation program before, but Reagan created the program, and as part of that, they instituted these Secretary of the Interior standards, they call them. So this part two shows that what you're doing complies with those standards. And so they interpret, pictures and drawings and say, yeah, it looks good. And so they already have that approval. The part three comes in at the end of the project. And so, and that's when the big tranche of equity, the rest of the historic tax credit equity is what it's often referred to. It's essentially just cash in exchange for the credits. That's when that comes in. And so when that comes in, that's when the bridge loan is paid down in full. And so this whole bridge loan paid down by historic equity, it happens in 95% of historic tax credit deals. The only time it doesn't, if you just have some huge cash source like grants or whatever that are upfront. But in vast majority of situations, you need these bridge loans. And so again, as soon as the part three is received, which that usually happens about 2 to 4 months after completion. And so for this project, for this phase of the project, that should be, sometime in Q1 of 25, this big tranche of equity will come in. And in fact, there's estimated to be about $500,000 extra or surplus that they'll then dedicate. They'll use the funds to pay down the bridge loan. And then the towns, assuming the town was a guarantor, town's exposure is gone at that point, and then they'll use the excess to help fund the next phase of the project. So, you can go to the next one. So this is way more information than you need, but just in case, it's helpful for your own, information later. This just kind of shows where this project is in the process. I've already talked through most of that stuff in terms of the steps. Again, more information than you need, but for reference later. The heart of this slide is intended to show that there are excess sources. When this historic, so let's say, tomorrow, the town agreed to provide this up to $500,000 co-guarantee along with CalFE. So what would happen is we'd go through this closing process with this bank, and they would, at the closing, they would be legally bound to pay in this tax credit equity at various thresholds. So a chunk would come in at closing, and then another chunk would come in usually at completion, which that would immediately go to pay down the loan. And then the final chunk comes in at the part three approval. And when all of that comes in, there are excess sources of $500,000. And that's not typical. So this is a great situation for CalFE to be in for this phase of the project because they got a bunch of extra money. And so the reason I wanted to drill down on that here is because it significantly reduces any risk that the town is exposed to or CalFE is exposed to as a guarantor on this bridge loan, because there's so much excess money that will come in, that it just mitigates the risk. And this assumes no additional dollars are raised. And again, if my contact information is in here, if any of you guys have questions about all this stuff that you may read after this meeting, feel free to send me an email or call me, and I'm happy to answer them. All right, next slide. So, obvious question is, what is the town's risk? The most likely outcome by far, because, every project in Virginia that we've worked on, that has actually started construction and had enough money to complete it, this is what happened, which is Part 3 is approved. And in that scenario, if the town were a guarantor, town is that the tax credit equity comes in, pays down the loan, town's exposure is eliminated. And so in that scenario, which again is by far the most likely scenario, all the town does is they sign the guarantee as part of the closing, and that's it. Nothing else would have to be done. Again, there's excess sources of roughly $500,000, a little more. The worst case scenario is that the Part 3 is never approved. Again, I've never seen that happen to a project in Virginia. Here it's an even more remote risk because the key is, when you send the pictures of what you did to the building, they're gonna look at it and say, does this comply with what you said you were gonna do in the Part 2? And so that's when you submitted your design. And so obviously this Part 2 approval that they've had for a long time now becomes part of the construction documents. So it's as important as all the specifications and, all the plans and specs that come from the architect. It is on a parallel, of parallel importance to those. So it is gospel as part of this construction project. And so you've got, again, Hill Studio, they've done probably hundreds. So Allison Blanton and Katie Gutshaw are the folks that have, you all may know them. They're really great. We do a lot of projects with them. Balzer, we've also done a lot of projects with them. Thor has done a bunch of projects. They did Center in the Square, which is a really big historic tax credit project in Roanoke. Part 2 is already approved. Again, I'm not aware of any projects that have not gotten approval. The only thing I've seen is they may say, well, I don't like this paint color. And so we've seen now and then you'll see them have to repaint something or, change a finish, or it's usually, pretty minor stuff. So sometimes it'll get delayed a month while that happens and they'll resubmit. That's pretty rare, especially in a situation like this where you have so many, experts in historic tax credit projects working on it. So again, from the perspective of risk, it's in my experience, it's very low risk given all these facts that I've gone through. All right, one more. And so just kind of a broader point. I thought this was kind of a interesting way. We do a lot of projects that have municipal ownership or municipal involvement in some capacity, and this seems like a neat way for the town to help provide support without having to directly put any money in, assuming everything goes as planned, of course, which is what we're all assuming will happen. If this doesn't happen, so the market right now is not the healthiest for the federal historic tax credit program. This bank is I certainly would not describe it as philanthropic, but it is, they recognize that this is a great project that's going to provide benefits for decades to come, and they can, in theory, get some good PR out of their participation in the project. And so they're willing to pay what is higher pricing than we would get if we had to go out to market to community development oriented type investors. And so that would probably cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, so instead of them netting, $1.5 million from credits on this phase of the project, it might be 1.1 million, or, and so it could be a serious hit and would be a serious hit to the project. And so I thought that might be an important point to make that you guys might appreciate. And then, obviously it just related to that point, it gives them kind of the maximum dollars they can realize from these programs, and therefore, realize the intent of the project, which will obviously benefit the community for hopefully years to come. All right. I think that's it.
Have any questions?
Got I guess a question. Kind of haven't put this in my terms, by the way. So phase 1 is done. Phase 1 is complete.
Well, so the phases that I've kind of switched the phasing nomenclature, I guess, a little bit. And when I say the current phase, really what I'm really overlaying historic tax credits on that because it has its own language as it relates to phasing. So when I'm just, hopefully this will help answer your question. What I really mean by that is all the costs that are going to be done in 2024, which is, you know, and Jill may help answer this too, but I think it's what we were calling the phase one and then phase two, which is facade work and that kind of stuff. So that's really the project that I'm describing here. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I was gonna say, with the entire, if you all expect a fair amount of questions, you might want to go ahead and pause the presentation before you get into it, not to disadvantage anybody, but to go ahead and have the planning commission come in, do their thing and get out. That would, because they're all waiting in the hall.
I could be done here in just a second.
That's fine. I'm just giving you, I'm just pointing that out as an option because
I just have just one more.
Do you have other
I've
questions?
got a couple questions.
Okay.
Let's pause.
Yeah, we can do
Let's
that.
do-
It's fine.
All right, so if we can go back to the planning commission, so that's right, we let her do it. All right, Summer, go.
So in closed session,
reconvene.
Just need a motion to
Someone-
reconvene.
so in closed session, the planning commission has voted to recommend.
I'm sorry, it cannot be a closed session.
Oh, it is in a closed section?
No,
Okay.
ma'am, it is an open session.
It is an
Cannot
open
vote
session.
in a
Okay.
closed session.
In a open session, the planning commission moved to recommend on the motion of Mr. Taylor and seconded by Mr. Scrantz, the advised changes of the comprehensive plan, and are recommending to council that those be amendments made to the transportation section of the comprehensive plan. The voting is as follows. Mr. Davis was an aye, Ms. Arthur was absent, Mr. Hale was an aye, Mr. Scrantz was an aye, Mr. Taylor was an aye, and Mr. Meyer was an aye.
Then, wanna make a motion?
We had the public hearing already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
So we can move on if one of you wants to make a motion for the ordinance.
go ahead.
Get a motion to adjourn.
You sure can. Unless there's any other comments, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve, what is it? Resolution 2024-13. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Ordinance 20.
Ordinance 2024-05 and amend the comprehensive plan.
Second.
And may I have a roll call for that?
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. Ratliff?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Aye.
Mr. Reese?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so that one passed. Thank you. I want to thank the Planning Commission also for joining us in on this.
Get the band back together.
Thank y'all.
We don't do this a lot, so then it ends up being a little confusion on how we do it. So, all right, if you would like to come back up, I'm sorry about that. All right.
Well, remember, the original plan was for this project, this construction project, to happen all at once. As you know, the cost of construction went up significantly. Before the costs went up, we had this application Part 1 and Part 2 approved for the historic tax credits as an entire project. But once we realized we had to phase it, we submitted amendments to those applications, and those were approved based on phases. The phase, the phasing gets a little complicated in this because the current phase of construction that we're in right now, we're calling Phase 1. The second phase will be the National Park Service funded grant for which we need the up to $500,000 bridge loan to match to start that. So for the historic tax credit purposes, Phase 1 or the first phase includes both Phase 1, the CDBG and ARC grants funded project that's happening right now, and then the subsequent phase for which we will need the bridge loan. Does that make sense? I know this is a lot of
Cleared up a lot of
details.
muddy water, yeah, but,
Yeah.
so in phase, so in our phase 2, if I'm correct, so the $500,000 matched CCCC to move to phase 3.
Yes, so if we got up to a $500,000 construction bridge loan, then we can move forward with the work on the exterior envelope on the building. And once the current construction project and that construction project are finished, then that's when we can realize the historic tax credit cash that would flow into the project that Adam was talking about.
And once that phase, whatever phase we're in is
Yes.
completed, then the $500,000 basically doesn't exist. It just goes back to the town, or does that is that paid? No,
That
once
would be
it's
paid that would be paid to the bank, who would be our investor that we're taking the construction bridge
Correct.
loan from. But we would have an additional over $500,000 to infuse into the subsequent phases
okay.
of the project and the final phases of the
Yeah,
project.
yeah, you answered my question.
Okay, great. Sorry, I took so many words to do so.
So just to make sure I understand correctly, the 1.5 million in tax credits, is that the amount that the bank would actually purchase them for, or do they purchase it, or that's not the actual amount of money that you receive? Or-
Yeah, that is the equity, that's referred to as equity. It's essentially what the bank is paying in exchange for the credits. Now, it's both the state and the federal credits. There would be a different state investor, but that doesn't really matter for the purposes of your question. What matters is that's the actual cash proceeds that's being realized by the project.
I assume that means that the tax credits that they're purchasing are actually a higher amount than that, and they purchase.
Exactly. Yep, that's their whole interest.
I got you.
Yeah, they make the spread.
So you said a couple times in the presentation that they were interested in purchasing that. Is that, what types of guarantee, I guess, is there that they will purchase those?
The typical series of events, and I think specific to this project, what would happen is, let's say the town voted to provide this up to $500,000 guarantee. That would trigger a flurry of activity, the end result of which immediately would be a term sheet or a commitment letter, essentially, like for a loan. Tax credit investments behave very similar to loans, where you'll get this term sheet or commitment letter or LOI. Everybody kind of refers to it differently, but it'll outline, okay, we're going to pay X price. We're going to pay in at these thresholds. It would also include their bridge loan, so they would say, we're going to provide you X amount of bridge loan, $450,000 or whatever it is, and it's going to be at X% interest and origination fees. So that term sheet, and maybe two term sheets, one for the loan, one for the tax credit, would then trigger a closing process, just like on a loan. And they usually take, this bank's pretty sophisticated, so we could probably get it done in 30, 45 days maybe or so. Depending on attorney's availability to actually create the legal documents that do it. And then at the end of that process, what triggers closing and what, sort of indicates they are legally bound to pay this equity is signing of all these documents at closing. And so simultaneous with those documents, signing those documents would be the town signing the guarantee. And so it all, that way you eliminate chicken and egg issues. So you close on the loan, close on the guarantees, you close on the tax credit investment all at the same time, so that nobody's kind of, everybody's got their boxes checked in terms of what they need as part of the closing.
Now, is that, you said that the bank that's doing the bridge loan, though, is not purchasing the state and the federal, or
They would be just doing the federal. Yeah, there's kind of an inside baseball rule where I'm not even certain exactly what it is, but banks can't use a whole lot of the state tax credits for whatever reason. But that's a very healthy market. So I can send an email tonight and have those sold tomorrow, kind of thing. So it would be a separate entity, using the state credits.
What percentage of the 1.5 million is the federal?
So I guess I could probably do that, although, so the state credit is 25% of your qualified costs, and the federal credit is 20%. So I guess, and then the pricing for state credits is a little better. So if I had to throw a number at you, it's probably somewhere like 60%, maybe a little better than that.
So the other 40% is guaranteed as well, or?
Both of them. I mean, both of them are guaranteed in the sense that at closing, they are legally bound to pay in when you get your Part 3.
Well, but you're not closing on the state.
Yeah, we would be, as part of that. I didn't mention that. But yes, we would close on the state credits at the exact same time as well, or maybe even before. Soon as we have this bank, if this bank were to do it, then I would immediately go out to the, and get our state investor, and that we'd either close with them before or probably more likely as part of.
I guess that's my question. So there currently isn't a state investor. We just are aware, or you're just aware that you would be able to get
Yeah,
one.
well, and I've communicated with a large insurance company that wants to do it. But I haven't, the only reason we haven't committed it to them is because now and then there are investors that are really motivated by state credits. And so we've had dynamics where we've said, all right, well, you can have the state credits, but you also need to take the federal credits at reasonable pricing. And so we wouldn't need that. I wouldn't need to hold the state credits anymore if this bank steps up and does the credits. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Sort of?
And I guess for the most part, yes.
Okay.
The another question I guess that came up in this conversation was, the way I understand it is we're leveraging the tax credits in order to get some of the grants needed for phase 2. And there was a question in regards to the fact that in order to receive, and I'm going to mix this up, but in order to receive either the grant or the credits, the property is held, by the town currently, or vice versa, by you guys. And then, but in order to receive the grant, it had to be outside of the town, or in order to receive the credits, it had to be outside of the town. And it seemed like that there was a little bit of a conflict in the process of, it's like we were using something that couldn't be, something that we were receiving because because it was held by the town, but we were using it in something that couldn't be town owned.
Do you want me to take that?
Sure.
Okay.
If that makes
Do you
any
have
sense
other-
at all, what I'm trying to say, because I know I'm butchering that, but
So
Can I try to clarify?
yes.
Because, at this point, I guess I know as much about the town side of this, as anyone. The town, on behalf of Calfee School, applied for a National Park Service grant. We were notified several months ago that that grant has been awarded. We have yet to accept it because that grant for $500,000 requires a $500,000 match. That phase will not be done until phase 1 is completed and the phase 2 is bid. It has to be bid because the amount of it exceeds our legal authority to extend the current contract. What Calfee does not have currently, correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, is a $500,000 to match that Park Service grant. So they are anticipating that when phases 1 and 2 are complete, they will get historic tax credits valued at amounts that exceed the $500,000 they want to borrow, that they would then pay back or pay to the bank so that the town would be off the hook. And then they would hopefully have an additional monies, they're saying $500,000, I haven't gone into their finances, to start phase 3. But they're also looking for additional funding for both phase 3 and phase 4. I believe the town manager is going to talk to you in a few minutes about phase 3 because they want us to apply on their behalf for some additional funding. And there is an EDA grant application that's also out there. So Jill and the Calfee School have done a marvelous job of finding resources, but each one of these grants
Twen-
earliest
24.
quarter 1, 25.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, I said 23, I meant
It'll be
25.
finished faster, the faster we can get.
So they're talking about a second phase that we have yet as a town to appropriate the grant that then requires the $500,000 match. And we've deliberately not appropriated it, which is an action you all have to take in order for us to start the whole process until the match was identified. And I think Jill has worked with several other banks and several other organizations trying to get that match previously, and this is the latest effort, because originally they weren't even intending to use federal tax credits. The original program only had state tax credits. So if I have complicated the world, I apologize, but we're actually talking about a phase that yet has to be approved by the town from the standpoint of you all appropriating grant money and/or match money to make that happen.
Thank you very much. To get to your question, another part of your question, Mr. Dawson, just as a brief reminder, the people working on the CalFee project secured the building. And the Redevelopment and Housing Authority, this was back in 2018 or 2019, the Redevelopment and Housing Authority agreed to take ownership of it so that the building could be counted as a match for the original grants that we got. So the way that the structure is built right now, that is checks all the boxes we need it to check, nothing's in conflict with each other, is that the Redevelopment and Housing Authority owns the building. The CalFee Community and Cultural Centers LLC has a long-term ground lease on the building. And that structure allows the historic tax credits to be utilized. So none of this is in conflict with each other. And
But now, correct me if I'm wrong, was the bank that you guys were pursuing was asking or requiring a letter that was for the town to basically say that the redevelopment authority and the town were the same, one and the
no,
same?
that was different. That was the Economic Development Administration grant proposal. They needed a letter, but they either needed a letter saying that the Redevelopment and Housing Authority and the town were essentially the same, or they needed the Redevelopment and Housing Authority to be established as a separate entity. And you all decided to pursue the second route, establishing the Redevelopment and Housing Authority as a separate entity. So once that process is done, we'll be able to submit the Economic Development Administration grant proposal. I know this is a lot of moving pieces, but that's where that.
Well, so so as far as everything that we are aware of, looked into, there's no roadblocks or conflicts with the way that we intend on, or the way that you guys are intending on using the tax credits and how the properties are currently held.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, if you're asking me, I can at least give my piece on it.
Yes.
Yeah, so, we do a lot of projects all over the country, as I mentioned, and, a lot of nonprofits and some municipal-owned projects. And there's always this kind of finessing you have to do between threading needles, between grants and the tax credit requirements. Fortunately, Jill had already done most of that before we even got involved, so they're kind of way ahead of the game. And so, no, I mean, our job is to find issues and fix them before we run into them as part of the closing. Because what'll happen is, as part of the tax credit closing, there'll be attorneys at the table making sure that the answer to your question is, no, there are no issues. And so if we haven't resolved them on the front end, then it delays closing and costs money and all that kind of stuff. And so, yes, there are no, to my knowledge, there are no issues that would prevent us from closing between, and that negatively impact the two, using grants with tax credits.
There is a pending issue, and that is the lease
True,
extension,
yeah.
which will be going to the Housing Authority later this week.
Yeah.
But you do not have the length of a lease at this point
Right.
to get the federal historic
Right.
tax credit.
And in my perspective, that's just kind of a matter of course as part of the closing versus an issue, so.
If the town were to guarantee the bridge loan, will the tax credits require a guarantee after the payout of the tax credits?
No. So all the town would be guaranteeing is the loan. There is a guarantee that the Cal Fee organization would be signing, totally separate as it relates to the tax credits, because essentially they're guaranteeing that they're not going to do anything that would violate the historic standards and like go in and, you know, take out some historic fabric of the building or whatever. I mean, it's a guarantee that never becomes operative because you'd have to shoot yourself in the foot. But just to make sure that distinction is clear, there will be a separate guarantee that only they will sign. As it relates to the tax credits, all the town would be signing is a guarantee of up to $500,000 of bridge loan debt. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
And how does the bridge loan debt get paid?
With the historic tax credit equity at the end.
It's just a guarantee that that loan will be paid back.
Exactly. Up to 500,000.
All that talking, I got a headache now.
I know. Yeah. Tax credits are just by definition complicated, unfortunately.
How long is the Cal Fee guarantee required? Because you're saying like the not modifying the building, because Cal Fee, the entity, ultimately is a lessee.
Mhm.
So what is they're making an obligation not to modify it. You're saying the town wouldn't need to, would the housing authority need to join in that guarantee of modifications or no modifications after the payment of the tax credits?
Yeah, you can make modifications. They just have to be within historic standards. Whether the the investor's attorney would require the town and to guarantee they're not, I think that would depend on the way the lease is written. Usually in this situation, the lease is written such that, that issue solves itself because the Cal Fee organization or the equivalent is the only entity that can make modifications within the 5 years, or modifications have to be approved by Cal Fee. That's often what we see, and they can't allow modifications that don't comply with historic standards. So, I guess the answer to your question ultimately would be revealed as part of the closing, whether they'd actually want the town. I know I've seen it without that because, again, it's usually built into the lease to provide that protection, and it's for 5 years. So the federal historic tax credit compliance period is 5 years. So after 5 years, you could actually demolish the building if you wanted to, but and it wouldn't cause any issues with the tax credits. But the compliance period is 5 years.
I'm sorry, I've got one more question, and I'm gonna hush. So, I guess the question for me, the last is, yeah, and I agree with what Darlene said. You guys have done, or Cal Fee, as a group, has done an amazing job trying to find a way of stacking, all this together to make it, be feasible to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Why is it necessary, or why is it necessary to step into a new liability before the first phase is done? Why is that necessary? Can you complete the phase one, see that process through, and then all of this opportunity that, was just presented to us, would that opportunity still be there without necessarily having to compound liability in the process?
So it really comes down to that phasing conversation. So what we're calling phase one is actually the first half of phase one with regards to the historic tax credits, the way that was submitted. So we are not going to be able to realize the historic tax credit. I think this is the way I'm understanding your question. We're not going to be able to get that infusion of historic tax credits into the project until after the exterior envelope work on the building has been done. And we can't start the exterior envelope work on the building until we have this bridge loan to match the National Park Service grant that's going to fund that.
And the other dimension to that question, or the answer to that question, is that you have to close with your tax credit investor before you finish. It's just a legal rule, essentially. And so most projects, they close with their tax credit investor, like before you even start construction. We've done plenty where it's in midstream, but you absolutely have to do it before you finish. So that's one sort of additional dimension. And then the other is that in order to, I guess it's just reinforcing what she said, to demonstrate the $500,000 match, we can't really demonstrate that until we've closed, because that's the point at which, that's the equivalent of like getting a grant award, where you can say, all right, here's the documentation evidencing that our investors are legally bound to pay in this amount of equity. So I think for those two reasons, we can't wait.
That grant, we've already been awarded that grant, correct?
The town has been awarded that grant, but has not accepted it. And
Right.
we can't accept it until you all, and we can't announce it until you have appropriated it.
Right.
And you can't appropriate it until we can demonstrate that we have the $500,000.
So phase one of the project is the interior of the building, right?
Phase one of the project is a portion of the interior of the building. It's of 3 classrooms in the child care center, the warming kitchen, and 2 vestibules.
So I guess that's my question is, can that phase one be completed and then this process still be done? Or would it prevent this process?
It would prevent their ability to move the credits legally to the, once it's quote unquote placed in service. So this, it's an IRS term to essentially demonstrate it's done. Once that happens, it's too late to bring in an investor. So you got to do it beforehand, unfortunately.
And our,
I think the issue is, had you not put phase 2 in with phase 1, what Mr. Dawson is suggesting could happen. But because you all have put phase 1 and 2 together, it has to go forward that way in order to get the tax credits the way it's been packaged.
Sort of. The only caveat to that is that, again, even if you were only doing phase 1, if you finished phase 1 and we hadn't closed with our investor, then it's too late. There's no way to monetize the credits within the rules of the program.
But you could have done just that one phase.
Sure, yeah.
Right.
That's theoretically
But
possible.
it's a packaging issue that they chose to put phase 2, which requires that grant and match in with phase 1. Phase 1 today is only, I shouldn't say only, it's a lot of money, is under $1.2 million. And yet you anticipate significantly more than that in tax credits with phases 1 and 2.
Right.
Because phase 2 would be another $1 million.
And part of that, the strategy there is that in order to attract investors, you got to hit a certain magnitude of costs. Otherwise, it's just not worth their time and cost. And so that's part of the strategy there. And usually you realize better economics as a result of that. So that's also driving that.
Okay.
we need to close on the historic tax credits with the investor before the building is put into service. And our plan at the end of phase 1 is to put the building in service as of the middle of October of this year with the child care center. So even though the full building's not going to be complete, so I think that's why we need to have
Correct.
this happen before the end of phase 1, what we're calling phase 1.
Correct.
I also just wanted to clarify one little thing. I'm sorry to make it even more complicated. The Calfee Community and Cultural Center does have almost $500,000 in the bank right now. We cannot use it for this purpose because we collected those as their restricted funds for other purposes, for furniture, fixtures, equipment that are going to go into the building. So it's not like we don't have any money at all to put into and that can support the guarantee of the loan. It's that those funds are restricted for other purposes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. We're good. Thank you. Okay. Our next presentation is Guy Smith with T.G. Howard Community Center.
Scared to get up here and I have no tax credits.
Not yet, right?
So this is a little old school. We don't have anything fancy up here. We'll pass it to Councilman Shannon. This is yours. You get the cheap version. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, the special one.
This is the little bit of the story of the T.G. Howard Center. The T.G. Howard Center was established in 1965. T.G. Howard was actually an African-American Methodist minister who had a vision of a building or community center for everyone. It is believed that the T.G. Howard Center is actually the first integrated community center here in this county. He got tired of seeing families that were black and white split up when it was time to go to school, and he wanted a place where everybody could come and just be together and serve as a community. He had this vision in 1958, 59. They met with the Christian Citizens League and the Mary Buford White Club. And then in 1961, unfortunately, Reverend T.G. Howard passed away. His wife and several other members in the community take on the charge. And in 1965, the building was erected and dedicated in May of 1965 for a whopping cost of $14,930, which will maybe get you half of a roof today. And the town was actually very involved in that. They gave the T.G. Howard Center $2,000 at the time to assist with that. So the story of the T.G. Howard is definitely connected with the town and people being motivated to serve the community. The T.G. Howard Center was just the Mecca Center for many, many different things. It was the Head Start program. It was a summer program for children of a certain socioeconomic level. They helped different people with brain injuries, GED classes, karate, ballet, you name it, they did it. It was like the Swiss Army knife I think, of community centers. One interesting fact about the T.G. Howard Center, kind of that goes along with CALFE, in 1966, CALFE, the integration and all those things occurred in Pulaski County. The T.G. Howard Center, of course, like I said, was built and dedicated in 1965. The T.G. Howard Community Center and the people that were involved in that helped with that transition. It's something that I think is often forgotten. You had children that went to CALFE, all of their educators were African American. So all of a sudden you pull these children from this type of environment and you put them in a different environment. And that was pretty anxiety, driven for a lot of families. And so there were actually meetings that occurred at the T.G. Howard Center for both black and white families to have discussions. And it's not well known because it's not documented because they kind of did it behind the scenes. So the T.G. Howard Center has been very involved in the history of the town with the community, obviously, and with families of all different backgrounds. The T.G. Howard Center also served as the YMCA, the Percy Corbin branch of the YMCA. Now, many of you have heard about the T.G. Howard Center, probably in the news, and some of the things we've been doing in the last 5 years. But for many people in the town, it is known as the Black Y. Now, I'm 52 years old, and I actually grew up close to the T.G. Howard Center. And for many of us, we always referenced it as the Black Y. Now, I actually did not know until I became an adult why they called it the Black Y. Now, as a child, I often tried to figure out how do you get the Black Y out of the T.G. Howard Center. It just made no sense to me. But when I found out later on that it was truly the Corbin branch of the YMCA that they allowed to utilize the T.G. Howard Center. People often hear me also call the T.G. Howard Center tugboat. It's not the biggest, it's not the prettiest, but it's effective and goes where it needs to go to serve the people that it needs to serve. So fast forward 2019, actually I was here, I was probably talking about CALFE at that point in time. I got a group of like-minded individuals, and we wanted to renovate the T.G. Howard Center. And actually some gentlemen here on the council assisted with that part as well. And so we wanted to do something that honored the past and what the T.G. Howard meant to many people, but also bring it up to a new environment and a new community as well. So we started that out and we just started to serve. And then of course COVID hit, which could have been kind of the death bell for a young organization of that kind. And we were just fortunate, we just pressed on and worked and continued to do outreach. And then lo and behold, we received different grants, and that enabled us to renovate the building itself. The T.G. Howard Center kind of fell in disrepair for about 12 or 14 years. And we didn't realize how significant it was until it was gone. And so we just worked did outreach. Sometimes you'll see me dressed up like Santa Claus. Sometimes you won't. That's not for the kids out there. But do programs for sickle cell anemia, children with AIDS, breast cancer. We do different things for the senior citizens, and it's just truly a community center that honestly affects the whole county and actually has affected Roanoke as well as Christiansburg as well as Whitfield as well. And it's all because of people like yourself, the town that have been supportive of it. And you often hear me say we don't necessarily celebrate Black history at the T.G. Howard Center because we believe Black history is American history. And so we celebrate it every month. But we do so by working and serving this community in the best way that we can. I'm, of course, a little bit biased. I think it's one of the best examples of people coming together for a common need. And the center itself is much like some of the people in our community. They just need a little help, a little well-intentions, a little sweat equity, and it's starting to look pretty decent at this point in time. And we're actually just recently got our building occupancy permit, and so we're going to be renting that out to families for birthday parties for children. It's been used for repasses already, and we want to do some educational programs in there. And we just want to bring it back to what it was. It's a historical building. It's one of the few buildings that was actually named after an African American at the time and still holds that name. We don't have tax credits or anything of that nature, so it's historical in the sense that it's historical to us. And so I was glad to be invited to come and talk about the T.G. Howard Center a little bit. Mr. Payne says I think I had the gift of gab. I did grow up Baptist, so I'm going to keep it short. But we do really appreciate everything. And one thing that we talk about the T.G. Howard Center, I can get up here and talk to you about it all day long. I can tell you all these wonderful stories, but just like I tell private individuals and organizations, inspect what you expect. If you want to see what the T.G. Howard Center is about, go to the website. If you want to see what we do, go to the Facebook page, because it's really never about the T.G. Howard Center. It's about the people we serve. So thank you all for letting me come and speak to you briefly. And you're more than welcome to come to 320 Altoona Road to check it out for yourself. Any questions, gentlemen?
Who do they get in contact with if the people want to rent the space?
Come to tghoward1965@gmail.com and we'll have a representative touch base. We actually patterned some of it from the town's train station a little bit. We want to make sure that it's accessible to people. And also the beautiful thing about the T.G. Howard Center is we have no debt. And that's because of kindness of people like yourselves. I often tell people, not in the sense of being braggadocious, but they've only had one fundraiser, and that was like in 2019. Every gift and award they've received has been based upon what people have seen in the news, what people have seen on Facebook, and what people have just read in different articles. And so our outreach is our fundraising mechanism. And so we've just been really blessed, and so we want to kind of pass those blessings on to the families that we serve as well. Like I said, it's not the biggest, it's not the prettiest, but it does just fine.
There's a lot of people doesn't know that Guy and I was the original starters of the Calfee School project before it got to where it is now. For about 2 years, we spent a huge amount of time, Guy more than me, doing a lot of legwork and a lot of texting all night long. I know your wife got tired of it because she told me.
Who's this Jamie?
Why is he sending you this information at 3 o'clock in the morning? It was on my mind. I had to get it off of it. So I sent it to Guy. Guy followed up on it. So anyway, we stepped back. They got a great board now, led by Jill and them. They're doing a great job. When Guy called and said, well, I've got another project I'm going to take on this, I said, have you lost your mind? Rest, man. But I had no doubt in my mind that you do that. There's no doubt that you're that kind of person.
We have some good people and just great volunteers, And everybody on the T.G. Howard board is a volunteer. And so we know what people are, the reason why they're doing it, and they're investing their time. But we definitely appreciate the support that you guys have given us as well.
Good job.
You may want to mention the effort that you've had at Back to School Time.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
has involved not only the police department, but all of our town employee departments, and you all have provided, I don't know how many hundreds of
Book bags, yeah.
bags filled with all kinds of stuff for kids to get ready to go back to school.
You know, it's funny, and my wife tells me we need to talk more about some of the achievements of the T.G. Howard Center, but we're just so busy serving, and I mean that in a genuine method. But Darlene's correct. We've seen things progress, and it's a fantastic story. We went from giving away probably 80 book bags in August of 2019 to like 360 book bags with pencils this last time. And I mean, so many families that show up, and it's just great to be able to serve. And with the police department and the town and the county as well, it gives everybody an opportunity to honestly feel good. You know, we tell people there's no greater feeling than doing something for someone with no expectation of a return. And believe me, you all know what I do for a living, and I can definitely be cynical in some of the things that I see on a daily basis. But this truly is I think one of the nicest surprises that I have dealt with professionally and personally, to see the kindness of people, sometimes in an environment that's not necessarily that kind, and to see people are willing to give for a good purpose. And that's the reason why the T.G. Howard is I think, where it is now. And, you know, it's not a Christian organization, but obviously it has Christian DNA. I mean, it's named after a minister. So I hope that maybe this might get me in somewhere. I don't know. Any other questions?
Thank you, guy.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you.
All right, next on our agenda is Resolution 2024-13, appointing Todd Day to the New River Valley Passenger Rail Authority. So if someone would like to make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, move that we approve Resolution 2024-13 as written.
Second.
And may I have a roll call for that?
Mr. Clark.
Aye.
Mr. Dawson.
Aye.
Mr. Ratliff.
Aye.
Mr. Klontz.
Aye.
Mr. Reese.
Aye.
Sign him up.
All right, now we'll move to the public comment period. This is where the public has 3 minutes to come up and speak. The first one I have is Tyler Altizer. If you could come to the podium, say your name and your address and what you're here about.
Yeah, my name is Tyler Altizer. I live at 202 Madison Avenue South, so just downtown, a few blocks away. I'm in the middle of marathon training, so I find myself on Door Trail Connector quite often on my way to the New River Trail to get those extra miles in on my runs. As the weather's been warming up, I've noticed at an alarming rate, a lot of individuals in our community are walking their animals without a leash on the trail. Many times people have to squat down, hold their dogs back as I run by, which obviously is a safety concern. These past few times I've went to run, I've went to see if there's any clear signage within popular entry areas, along the trail of the leash ordinance that is within town. And I haven't seen anything yet other than in Kiwanis Park. There is a sign that's kind of tucked away in the corner, but if you're walking in from the parking lot, it's actually on the back side of the sign, so you're not going to see it. So I'm hoping that the town could possibly put more clear signage along the trail and in popular entry spots at Cool Springs, Heritage Park, Kiwanis Park as well. Everybody knows Door Trail is pretty popular within town. I don't see it as if somebody's going to get bit with how often it's occurring to me that I'm seeing this, but when. I'm just hoping that we can have some clear signage. That way it does eliminate the excuse, if it is to ever be enforced, that they didn't know that there was such a leash law within town. It happens about every time I run, I come across an animal not on a leash.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll write it down. She's got it wrote down already, and we'll see what we
Yeah,
can
I
do.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I will say I was running down that trail myself one day, and about tripped over a deer while I was going through there too.
It wasn't on its leash? It was not on its leash. All right, next one is Stephen, is it Simon? Okay.
So I come here today to talk to you about town sewage. How many of y'all would like to smell human waste in your backyard, waste running through a creek every morning? Anybody? No. So for about the last 2 months, we've had sewage running through a creek in the middle of town. My address is 201 Linden Circle. I have contacted the town. The town said they had a resolution for this. The resolution was to unstop the pipe that was backed up, spewing waste into the creek. To me, that is not a resolution. That is a patch. This creek currently has waste still in it. If you look at the picture up on the screen, you can actually see the clear water in the top part of it. That's standard water running through a creek. The lower section of that is gray water. That's waste. That has been compacted for 2 months. I know the town wasn't aware of it then, but I've made them aware. All they did was unblock this. This whole area needs to be cleaned up. You're talking, this creek is, where this block was 150 yards up the creek from my home. My house sits on the creek. I smell this on the warm days. It's not something everybody else wants to smell. So I'm trying to hold the town liable to clean all this up. It's toilet paper, FEMA products. What I'm trying to do is make more people aware at this point to ensure this is handled appropriately. So far, I feel the town has failed me in doing so. What I want to know from the gentleman up here is, what are you guys able to do to help me out to make sure this is taken care of appropriately?
What did you say your address was?
201 Linden Circle.
And do you know what the name of this particular stretch of creek is? That you just,
It'd be called Profanity Creek right now.
well, but I'm just trying to get a sense of where I'm not familiar with
This
Linden, so.
creek runs actually directly
It comes
behind
behind
Poor
us.
Boys.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Feeds down into Pete's Creek.
Okay, so it's
Trout.
Rules Run.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to make
I
sure.
don't know the name of the creek myself. I live on it. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's
I know it's tough to get construction equipment. I've been advised by the maintenance that they don't have the equipment to clean this up. I've been advised that they were going to lime it. As we know, lime, yes, it'll kill some of the stuff that's on the surface, and it will take months to rectify the situation. With the hot days coming up, my house is gonna smell like waste. This is something I need the town to be aware of to get this cleaned up immediately.
Todd?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity, unfortunately, in these circumstances, to meet a gentleman here today at the office, and we absolutely will take every law, and I will absolutely speak to DEQ tomorrow and let them know what's going on, invite them to come in town, take a look at it. So we'll take every appropriate action that we can along with DEQ to be sure we get that sanctioned appropriately.
DEQ
so-
has all these pictures and videos already at this time.
Great, so actually ahead of the game then, so we will absolutely take every step that we can to clean it up. I wouldn't want it behind my house, I'm sure anybody else wouldn't either. So we will absolutely do everything we can, to clean it up and get it appropriately dressed up.
Where did you say you thought it came from?
There's an intersection of Oakland and Greenlee. There's 2 homes that are right at the intersection. It was directly behind that. And it's actually a town sewer. It's been acknowledged by the town.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it has been rectified on the fix. The leak has been fixed. Okay, all right. Now we'll move to the consent agenda. Your consideration is February 8th, 2024 Town Council meeting minutes. If someone would like to make a motion that we accept them.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve February 8th, 2024 council meeting minutes.
Second.
And may I have a roll call for that, please?
Mr. Clark?
Aye.
Mr. Dawson?
Aye.
Mr. Ratliff?
Aye.
Mr. Klontz?
Abstain.
Mr. Reese?
Aye.
All right. Now we'll move on to the council comments. So first up is Mr. Clark.
Have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Dawson?
I was actually just curious, and it doesn't necessarily require an answer now, but the EDA benefits from the VDOT, from the changes that was just made this evening, I'm just curious are those funding benefits that we actually that we have access to apply for now for things, or is it just additional funds that we'll just naturally receive because of it?
You talking about our economic development?
No. I'm a UDA. I'm sorry, UDA.
Okay, I'm gonna lean on my, town manager, cause she's more familiar with it than I am, so take advantage of the opportunity.
This is the last time I'm gonna, she's letting me, spend time doing that. The urban development area designation will open up doors for us to apply for funds that we
Yeah.
currently cannot apply for. And we have a laundry list of needs that we've discussed, at quarterly meetings that we have with VDOT representatives, and they have been the ones to urge us, to seek that designation. For small communities like the town, you can designate the entire community, the entire town, its boundaries as an urban development area. For larger cities or counties, they generally will specify certain areas within their parameters where they want that kind of designation, and they are areas that are more urbanized. So we are very pleased that the council has approved that modification to the comp plan. And I think from what Summer told you all, there's one more step, although I don't know that it's absolutely essential before we start applying, but you may have at your next meeting a resolution actually creating the urban development area designation on behalf of the town.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Eckles?
I got just one for the town manager. I don't know if anybody was aware of it, that the lobby at the post office is now closed after 5 or 6, closed on Sundays and holidays. I'm not sure why. I'm 62 years old and that lobby has never been locked. So I don't know why. If there is an issue with people in there, then I wish they would just reach out to the town. Maybe we could help them with some extra patrol, whatever. I'm in there at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. I'm not saying nothing's going on. I don't even know why it's being like that, but it's really going to hamper our small business in town. It's going to hamper people who don't get off at 5:30 to get there. They're going to be able to check their mailboxes. They're paying to rent these boxes. They should access that box 24/7. So I left here because we couldn't get in, and of course, go to Dublin. Their lobby's wide open. No hour changes or whatsoever. So I'm not sure why it was done, but I just want to see if you could reach out to maybe Mike Mooney or a Massey district supervisor. He could reach out to Morgan Griffith, that's on the federal side, and see if he can get an answer why that lobby's closed.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. Have you heard why
I
it's closed,
haven't.
anybody?
I haven't. I can reach out to Griffith's office if he's not in, talk to Cody, or Warner if he's not in, talk to Shane. Shane was actually in my office today. Had I known that, I would have mentioned it. So
Yeah.
I will actually look into it with the postmaster, see if I
I
can.
mean, you may walk over there, somebody walk over and just ask postmaster, because I don't know why.
Absolutely will.
And if all the rest of them's gonna be open, we have a lot of people use that thing, don't get in here till after 6. And they're renting those boxes, and right now, what they're renting and not being able to use. So I don't know. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Manager, that's all.
Mr. Klotz?
Nothing this evening.
Mr. Reese?
I was thinking about the VDOT changes and the UDA designation, and I was noticing that I don't think I'd mentioned this before, but it looks like the town has paved a new sidewalk out towards the Calfee Center, which I think was needed and was very much appreciated. But I was thinking about that because as I was driving up Route 11 the other day, I saw somebody walking towards the hospital. And I think I've probably mentioned this before, probably since before Mr. Day was here, that I think I know we've got lots of places in town that could use redone or new sidewalks, but I do think that that's a place that I definitely see people walking. If you know what I mean, Mr. Day, down from the Walgreens towards the hospital. And I know some of that might be difficult engineering-wise, but I think the more we can do to make that an actual designated sidewalk, I think that'll be a real safety improvement. and also wanted to say thank you to whomever it was who fixed that valve on Washington and 6th Street. I know I've been complaining about it for months, so thank you very much. It's been driving me a little crazy. So thank you for that. And also I wanted to mention, I forgot to make a disclosure under 2.2-3114F, the transaction of the CalFee, requested presentation earlier from Mr. Mark Wood, that I am the registered agent for both the CalFee Community and Cultural Center Incorporated and CalFee CCC LLC, which is the entity that will be used for the real estate tax credits. There's 3 or more people like me who provide services like that to those entities. Though I am able to participate in the transaction fairly objectively and in the public interest, I choose to abstain from doing so. Thank you. And Olivia, I can send you a write-up of that.
I just want again to thank Ms. Burcham for hanging around and sticking with us and helping this transition. I know that Mr. Day is going to do great. He's going to do great things here, because we are a town that's ready to move forward, and you got us in the right spot. And we really do appreciate everything that you've done. Like you say a lot, we have a great staff. We're ready to, we're cocked and ready to go. So just continue on. We'll keep moving forward, and it's hard to tell what we're going to do. But that's it for me, because I can't think of anything else right now. I know there's probably something. But so now we'll move to the manager's report. So
Absolutely. I've got just one quick comment or two to make. I had the opportunity to meet via Zoom with Jill and her team today, and that project is absolutely complicated, and I'm absolutely impressed to see the way Darlene just handles that with grace and tact, and it's obvious that she's been involved with that project for a length of time. So I'd appreciate any of you throwing me a life vest and a raft when possible. But Jill had another request that I was actually going to bring before you. She sent me an email, but Jill, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but being that you're here, if you'd like to make that request, that way I won't have to try to read the letter. They can ask questions. But she had some, we've already got an ARC grant to some degree for that project, and she's got an opportunity to maybe add some grant opportunity to it. So I'm just going to be quiet while I'm ahead and let you have it.
So when we got the funding, the CDBG and ARC funding for what's now phase 1, what we thought it was going to be for the whole building, that was about $2 million. It was exactly $2 million. Since then, obviously, prices went up. We're not the only project for whom prices have gone up. I'm not the only one, but I might have been the most annoying one to DHCD to be saying, you funded this project, now we need some more money. Darlene's heard me say this. We need to be able to finish the project. What can you do for us? And finally, they've invited us to apply for some additional ARC funds, to revise, to add some funds to the ARC grant, which we got specifically for the kitchen component of the center. So they've invited us to submit an application revision proposal where we would request an additional $700,000 that would allow us to expand the kitchen into the commercial kitchen that we have a plan for, and that we had initially anticipated going there. So we're really excited about this news. It does require, we are not asking the town to pay anybody to write that grant proposal or to do anything. We're just asking for permission to submit this request under the town's header so that we can hopefully get that additional funding and expand that kitchen. Just as a very brief reminder, you've heard us talk about this project so much, but right now in phase 1, we only had funding to renovate the small 500 to 600 square foot kitchen. And it's only going to be utilized, because it has such a small ceiling, it can only be utilized as a warming kitchen. So what we're requesting is money to expand the kitchen to the full commercial 1,300 square foot commercial kitchen that will allow us not only to serve the needs, the nutritional needs of the child care center, but also to rent the space out in the evenings and weekends for bakers, caterers, and so forth to be able to start up or scale up their food-based businesses. And then we also anticipate having a full-time chef there who will not only prepare meals for the child care center, but perhaps for agencies like Agency on Aging, for the Meals on Wheels program, to generate some revenue, and also some market rate sales of meals too, so that we can keep that going and it's financially sustainable. But none of that's going to be possible in the 500 square foot warming kitchen. So if you all have any questions about that, would love to hear them and answer them.
This is to enlarge it to what you originally.
Yes, to the original plan that we had for it, that we had to scale back because of costs going up so much.
And this project, this addition has got the same criteria and guidelines as the original ARC guidelines, just additional funds.
Yes, so this is the same thing that we requested from them, but we're not able to fully realize because we didn't have enough money after 2021 when costs went up so much.
I've got one more question.
Yeah.
You can sit down.
Okay.
The request earlier with the historical tax credits, when is the last opportunity for this governing body to respond to you? I mean, when is that application process? When is it due?
So there's no application process for the historic tax credits, but we have sped up. We've really put a lot of pressure, as you saw today, on our contractor to finish up this phase one, what we're calling phase one, so that we can occupy the building starting in August. And since we need the tax credit deal to close by then, I guess, and since he said it was going to take about 1.5 months, it would be nice to have that done by 2 or 3 months before August, which is, I guess, June or May.
Can you say that like June 15th, May 1st? Because
Let's say
I've
May
got to push.
1st. May 1st
All right, all
would
right.
be, but it would be nice to get it done earlier than that. But if we can't get it done, because we do know that this bank's willing to do it, I don't know how long they will be. But let's say May 1st for now.
And we haven't, but what I'll do is I'll target a May 1st deadline letter to you in response to your request.
Great.
Is that
Thank you
good?
so much.
Okay, all right.
I appreciate that.
That's all I've got, Mayor.
That's all you got?
That's all I've got.
What'd you
Let
do this week?
I do. That's all I've got business-wise, but I do want to say again, and I mentioned it to some level last couple weeks ago, but I do want to thank Darlene for her assistance and her patience. I know she has explained every project that she's working on to me, with me, at least 2 or 3 times, and she's wondering when it's going to sink in. But I want to thank you for your professionalism, your courtesy, your ability, your patience with me, and I'm sure that in the future we'll have an opportunity to cross paths again, and I'm looking forward to it. But thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck in your travels.
She's been saying that for a long time about us. When's it going to sink in? So it's
Waiting.
all right. With that, just a reminder of our future council meeting. Next one will be March 5th, 2024. Closed session at 5:30. Open session begins at 7. And as I have nothing else on the agenda, I declare this council meeting adjourned.